If you hike long enough, you learn the rules. You know what animal tracks look like. You know what weather looks like. And most importantly, you know what it sounds like when a forest goes completely unnaturally silent. But what happens when you find something on the trail that breaks every single rule? At first glance, it looked like garbage. A tangle of gear left on the lip of a cliff, rope, a shredded jacket, a headlamp with a cracked lens, the kind of debris you'd expect after a storm ripped through a campsite and scattered everything downhill. Except nothing was scattered. Every item was placed, deliberately, almost carefully, as if someone had knelt at the edge of a 300-foot drop, laid their things out one by one, and then simply stopped existing. Jasper noticed it mid-stride. He'd been hiking solo since dawn. He wasn't doing it for fitness or to film a vlog. He just liked the quiet. He was the kind of guy who had logged over 1,000 miles on trails across the Pacific Northwest. He knew what abandoned gear looked like. This looked wrong. He stopped walking, listened. There were no voices echoing off the rock, no boot scrapes on gravel, just wind. The spot felt heavy. The way a room feels when someone has been standing in it, staring at you, and just left. Jasper crouched near the pile, careful to keep his weight away from the edge. The backpack caught his attention first. The jacket beside it was torn to ribbons, but the pack looked like it had been set down 5 minutes ago. He reached for the zipper, and for a reason he couldn't explain, a deep primal knot forming in his stomach. He hesitated. He expected the usual water bottle, granola bars, a folded map. What he found was none of those things. The inside of the backpack was organized, not hiker organized, but methodically, almost clinically arranged. Sealed plastic pouches, airtight containers, a folded square of heavy tarp, a tight roll of thin wire, everything placed with intention, like a kit built for a purpose he didn't understand. And sitting on top of it all was a note. It was handwritten, fast. The letters were pressed so hard into the paper that the pen had nearly torn through. Jasper could picture the hand that wrote it. Shaking, rushing, running out of time. He read the first line. Don't go down. His eyes moved to the second. It's out. Third. It's not a dog. And then, separated slightly, it's been quiet. Jasper reread the lines, hoping his brain was just misinterpreting a joke. It wasn't. Below those 4 lines was one final instruction. If you hear it, don't look for it. A gust of wind hit the cliff face. The forest below rippled, like a single dark wave rolling through the valley. Jasper felt a sudden, absurd urge to laugh. A handwritten warning on a cliff? It sounded like the opening of a bad horror movie. But his hands weren't laughing. His hands were freezing cold. His heart was hammering against his ribs. Jasper kept searching the pack, desperate for an ID, a phone, anything normal. He found a small metal tag with a number in black marker, a pouch carrying a faint, sterile chemical smell, and a disposable phone. Screen dark. Battery dead. He set the phone down and looked around. The ridge was totally empty. And then he heard it. Not a voice, not an animal cry. A sound from the woods below, low, drawn out, like air being pulled through a crushed pipe. He froze. Silence. Then it came again, closer. Jasper's brain desperately reached for labels. Fox, mountain lion, a dying bird, but none of them fit. The sound was almost familiar, the way a word is almost familiar when someone pronounces it completely wrong. It sounded like something practicing a noise it hadn't fully learned yet. Jasper stepped back from the edge, and that's when he noticed the rope. One end was tied to a rock anchor, knotted perfectly. The other end dropped over the lip of the cliff and disappeared into the thick canopy below. Someone had climbed down. Another sound rose from beneath the tree line, a heavy, slow scrape, followed by a soft thump, like dead weight being dragged across the dirt and dropped. Jasper didn't shout. He stood perfectly still, looking at the note one more time. The ink had bled in one corner, and beneath the final line there was one last sentence. Half-written, unfinished. It doesn't. That was it. The thought just stopped, as if the hand holding the pen had been interrupted. Jasper closed the backpack, set it down, stood up, and then he ran. He didn't run toward the trailhead. Human instinct screams at you to go back the way you came, to get to your car. But the trailhead was downhill. The trailhead meant descending into the trees, and the sounds weren't behind him, they were below him. So Jasper, using every ounce of hiking experience he had, ran uphill. higher ground, open ground, away from the shadows pooling between the trunks. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs felt like lead. Only then did he stop and turn around. Nothing, no movement, no sound at all. The forest had gone perfectly, completely still, as if it had exhaled once and decided to hold its breath. And to an experienced hiker, that is the most terrifying detail of all. Because real animals don't turn off. Birds don't stop mid-call unless something makes them. A forest that goes silent is a forest that's listening. Jasper pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so badly he missed the screen twice. When the 911 operator answered, he gave his location, keeping his voice as steady as possible. Then he said the part he felt crazy saying. There's a note on the ridge. It says something escaped. There was a pause on the line, but it wasn't a confused pause. It was the calm, chilling pause of an operator who has heard this exact kind of call before. Stay where you are, the operator said. Do not return to the area. Do not look down the ridge. Help is on the way. Within 30 minutes, the entire trailhead was shut down. No explanations. Just rangers fanning out, moving hikers to the parking lot in quiet groups. Trail maintenance, they said. Because questions attract the wrong kind of attention. The team that arrived to meet Jasper wasn't a standard volunteer search and rescue unit. They were trackers, wildlife officers in unmarked tactical gear. They carried heavy rifles and equipment Jasper had never seen on a mountain before. Nobody joked. Nobody questioned his story. Show us exactly where you found it, the commander said. Jasper led them back from a safe distance. The gear was still there, untouched. That detail made the armed team shift. Their pacing slowed. They stopped walking in a cluster and began moving the way military units move when they expect to be ambushed. A wildlife officer crouched beside the open pack. He read the note. His expression didn't change, but his jaw locked tight. He pulled his radio close to his mouth and whispered, "Secure the perimeter. Nobody goes past the tree line." They didn't send anyone down the rope, not even close. Instead, as dusk fell, they brought out the thermal scopes. A healthy forest at night should be lit up with heat signatures. Birds, mice, deer, but the operator pointed the scope at the section of woods directly below the cliff where the rope hung. It was dark, a massive, unnatural pocket of cold in a living forest, as if every warm-blooded creature had quietly, deliberately fled that exact spot. The operator adjusted the scope, scanning the dead zone, and then a heat signature flickered on the screen. It was large, low to the ground. It didn't move like a bear, and it sure as hell didn't move like a deer. It traveled in a perfectly straight, deliberate line. It stopped, held perfectly still for 3 seconds, then moved again. It was tracking. The shape slid behind a wall of thick brush and vanished. A radio crackled. A tracker on a lower trail called in, his voice shaking. "I've got a disturbance down here. Deep drag marks." Something massive moved through. Jasper's stomach dropped. He hadn't imagined it. Near midnight, the command officer walked over to Jasper. "We're treating this situation as credible," he said. "But the backpack doesn't match any registered hiker. No missing persons." By morning, the trackers found more than just drag marks. They found zip ties, a concealed blind built into the rocks, camouflaged perfectly blood that wasn't human wiped on the anchor of the rope. And that was the moment Jasper realized the horrifying truth. The gear on the cliff wasn't abandoned by a frightened hiker. It wasn't a warning. It was a trap. Someone had built a blind. The sealed pouches, the tarp, the wire, it was infrastructure. The person who wrote that note hadn't been running from the creature. They had been studying it, feeding it, and the backpack sitting in plain view on the trail. It was a lure designed to make curious hikers stop, open it, and stand right on the edge of the cliff, while whatever was down below climbed up the rope. Jasper had been the bait. The officers took a formal recorded statement from him. Then they told him, without any room for negotiation, "Do not talk about this. Not online, not to friends." The official public story? A false alarm. Area closed for trail maintenance, clean, forgettable. Before Jasper was escorted off the mountain, he looked at the commander one last time. What was it? The officer didn't look at him. He just said 5 words.
"You did the right thing?" He paused. "By running uphill." Jasper went back to hiking eventually. But never that ridge. He checked the news for weeks. Nothing.
Families posted smiling photos from the exact overlook where he'd knelt beside that backpack. unaware of what lived in the valley beneath them. But a few months later, Jasper received one final detail. It was passed to him secondhand from a source on the search team who couldn't let it go. When the armed unit had returned to the cliff edge at dawn to pack up the evidence, the backpack was still there, except the note had been changed. Not removed, not destroyed, added to. Someone had slipped past the armed perimeter in the dead of night, walked right up to the cliff, and finished the note. It was the exact same frantic handwriting. The person who set the trap was still out there watching them. Jasper couldn't stop thinking about that original unfinished line. It doesn't. The new edition was written right beneath it. Just 4 words that prove the writer had been sitting in the dark, watching Jasper the entire time he was on the cliff. Watching him drop the bag, watching him run. The finished sentence read, "It doesn't." Like the ones who run, Jasper knows, with the kind of certainty that lives deep in your bones, that if he hadn't run uphill, he would have been the catch of the day. He would have been dragged down into the quiet part of the woods, where the thermal scopes show absolutely nothing alive, and no one would have even known to look.